Are you concerned about your child's excessive screen time and social media usage? Aren't we all? Well, it's completely understandable if you are. Recent research published in the Journal of Youth and Adolescence has revealed a significant link between increased social media use and higher rates of depression and anxiety, especially among girls. Additionally, data from the Harris poll shows that a staggering 86% of Gen Z individuals aged 16 to 24 believe that social media directly impacts their happiness negatively. Well, joining us today is Michael Jacobus, an internationally recognized author, child development specialist, and the executive director of Reset Summer Camp for Digital Detox and Life Skills, the world's first clinical summer camp program tailored for teens and adolescents grappling with unhealthy screen time habits and gaming addiction. So you know this is a show you need to listen to. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Hi, Dr. Meg. I'm happy to be here.
So this is going to be a great conversation. What inspired you to start Reset Summer Camps? Was it a personal issue? Was it an issue you saw with kids around you? What got your juices going when it came to starting a camp like this?
Well, it's a little bit of both. I've been a summer camp director for over 35 years.
Mm-hmm.
I went to summer camp as a kid and grew up going to summer camp and becoming a junior counselor and then a regular counselor, and finally a camp director. And then when I had my own kids, my oldest son, who's now fully grown, when he was in high school, he became addicted to World of Warcraft.
Okay.
My wife and I had no idea what to do. It was a daily battle, constant arguing, white-knuckled him through high school, and there was no such thing to send him to. We could send him to a traditional summer camp, and he'd be home in a week with, no real skills and dying to get back on his game. And so it was always in the back of my head.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2018, when every kid in the world seemed to get addicted to Fortnite,
Mm-hmm.
and the World Health Organization declared gaming disorder as a diagnosable thing, I decided to hook up with a clinician that I knew who works in Los Angeles and started Reset Summer Camp, specifically designed to deal with digital addictions in teenagers and to get them a detox from their screen time and to teach them some life skills so they're actually ready to leave home when they graduate high school, be it to go to college or get an apartment and get out in the world.
This is pretty heavy stuff you're talking about. You're talking about detox and you're talking about addiction with games, which so many kids are. Talk to us about what you saw in your son and what addiction to social media or gaming looks like. How can a parent figure out if their child's addicted or not?
Well, I'm smiling because every time I get that question from a parent, I say, if you have to ask that question, chances are you already have a problem.
Yep.
But there are obvious signs, reclusive behavior, sleep patterns becoming unmanageable, behavior at home becoming unacceptable, refusal to participate in family activities, even something as simple as come to the dinner table. Dietary habits, obesity, anger, anxiety, depression, like you talked about in the opening. All of these things are warning signs that there could be an addiction to a screen, be it social media, video gaming, or what we call streaming, which are the kids that are addicted to video content, like YouTube, Netflix, or even porn, but they're not specifically gamers or specifically social media kids.
I think it's important to talk about because a lot of these things are happening and parents don't know. I mean, some don't know about streaming. It seems that these kids are kind of ahead of their parents as far as knowledge about what they can tap into and what they can't. When I talk to kids in my practice, I will often back up and say, is your son throwing a fit when you say, okay, you've been on for an hour, and they throw a fit when you say you're done? Because even then, to me, but I'm not an expert in this area, that is a sign that addiction may be around the corner. because it's kind of like taking alcohol away from somebody. If somebody doesn't have a drinking issue, and you say no more drinks, they're going like, okay, what are the earliest signs that a parent could see? Because a lot of parents, they don't want to know that their kid's addicted, or they don't want to know that their kid's on their way to addiction, because they just don't want it to be. So what are some of the really early signs before they're isolated and streaming and all that kind of thing?
Well, reclusive activity
Mhm.
is kind of the first sign. If you ask your kid to show you what they're doing on social media or what video game they're playing, and they immediately pause it or turn it off or
Mhm.
don't want you to see it, that's kind of the first sign. And then inability to put it down, either the
Yeah.
phone or step away from the video game. And one of the problems is, when I was a kid, you had to go to an arcade with quarters to play video
Mhm.
games. But when video games came into the home, there was a screen that would show up that said game over. You
Yes.
actually finished the video game, and you could play it again if you want to, but that was it. And today's video games have no end.
Right.
There's just a constant quest. There's always something new to do, always something new to buy, always somebody to interact with. There is never an end time. And kids don't have, most of them who get addicted don't have the mental ability to put a clock on themselves and to know that it's time to step away.
And I think that because of their age, they have no clue how harmful it is to them, because probably part of them say, well, I'm different. I'm fine. Yeah, there's addiction, but that's not me. So talk to us about your camp. A 15-year-old boy comes to the camp, and it's an immersive, intense program, but you also have fun at the camp for us. So a parent decides, okay, my child needs to go to camp. I'm going to drop him off. Then what happens over the next week?
Well, the first thing that happens is they fill out an application. You can't just sign up and
Okay.
send your kid to our program.
So they have to
The
qualify. Okay.
Yeah, the application has about 30 screening questions that are reviewed by my clinical staff, who then call the parent back to discuss the application.
Hmm.
And, most kids don't want to come to my program.
Right. Sure.
They feel they're being punished. It's unlike a traditional summer camp where I'm signing kids up for next year before they leave this year.
Right.
And the program is actually 4 weeks long.
Okay, great.
And it's hosted on university campuses. So the kids are in dorm rooms, they have a roommate, they have responsibilities, they have a set sleep schedule and a set eating schedule. So when the parent arrives with the kid, they should have been notified that they're coming to this camp program. Like I said, they don't want to be there. They're not excited to be there. Their social skills are zero.
Right.
They don't communicate with each other. They don't communicate with me and my staff. They hate us. They hate their parents for sending them there.
Hmm.
But it's actually kind of funny because it creates almost a tribal us against them situation.
Yeah.
So because none of them want to be there. So
Right.
now they're in a roommate situation with somebody else who doesn't want to be there.
Right.
So they can kind of bond over their misery
Or
together.
plot how to run
Um,
away. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the screening questions, has your kid ever run away from a program or been kicked out of a program, things like that.
Hmm.
Because if there's anger management issues or other addiction issues, alcohol, drugs, things like that, that's not what we're equipped for, and we will refer the camper to another kind of program.
Hmm.
But once we determine they're a good fit for our program, then we start with the 4 weeks of detox, therapeutic intervention, and life skills and summer camp fun. We go to the beach once a week. We play volleyball. We play board games. We do music lessons. We do yoga. I mean, it's summer camp.
Hmm.
It just happens to have a therapeutic and life skill component.
Is this for boys and girls?
Yes, it's a co-ed program, although typically 60 to 70% of our kids are boys
Mhm.
who are gaming addicted.
Hmm.
The rest are girls who are social media addicted. There is some crossover. We'll get a girl who's a gamer once in a while and a boy who's into social media, and then we'll get the occasional streamer, like I mentioned.
Hmm.
But usually it's more of a 60-40 boys and girls gamers versus social media kids.
So you've decided to accept a kid, and he's a gamer, and he comes the first couple of days, he's ripping mad, he doesn't want to talk to you. How do you get that kid to engage with you, and about how long does it take?
It takes at least 3 days up to the first week to really get some solid engagement. The kid will go to bed even though they're not sleepy at 9:30. We do 9:30 bedtime, lights out at 10, and no kid is sleepy at 10, especially if they are gamers and they're used to being up till 2 in the morning and drinking Gatorade and eating Doritos and stuff. And then we wake them up at 6:30 so we can gather at 7 and have breakfast at 7:30. And most kids are super sleepy and don't want to get up at 6:30. So it takes us a good week to get them all on the same schedule into a set routine. And like I said, it's kind of beneficial because none of them want to be there. So they all start to what I call accept their fate together. They'll write letters home. I hate it here. I'm sorry. I called you a bitch. Get me out of here. Come pick me up. Yeah. And I tell the parents ahead of time, you're going to get those emails, or, because they'll write letters and we scan them and email them to the parents. But we have a 3-to-1 camper to staff ratio. We have 2 licensed clinicians on staff 24/7. It's a very small program, but it's very intensive. So the kids are reluctantly participating. And like our therapist says, we do group therapy 3 mornings a week. The first week is super light because the kids are not participating. They're not raising their hand. They're not offering any information. So it's really just giving them a safe space to be themselves and talk and start to trust the staff and start to trust the new friends that they've made or are about to make. And by the second and third week, they're actually opening up and sharing.
Do you find, or do the counselors find, that as kids get rolling and they start talking about things, that other issues come up besides gaming? For instance, if a kid is struggling with their home life or friends or other things that they don't know, are there other emotional or psychological issues beneath the gaming that the counselors have to deal with as well?
All the time. There's kind of a two way to answer that question. I'm going to start by saying probably about 40 to 50% of the kids who attend my program have very obvious, recognizable, diagnosable issues, be it depression, anxiety, ADD, mild Asperger's, mild autism, things like that. And they've never seen a therapist. They have no medication. They have no therapeutic connection. And, like I said, I have 2 licensed clinicians on staff. It doesn't take a rocket science to notice certain issues. And we do clear a lot of that up with good sleep and good eating. But we encourage all parents to get their kid assessed if they even think that there's an issue. And I can't tell you how many times I tell parents it is not a personal failure on your part if your child has a behavioral or a cognitive challenge. So get them assessed and find out. But then aside from that, during, like I said, we have group therapy 3 mornings a week. We have individual therapy that happens every day, but it's more organically. So it's not necessarily every kid every day. But one of our therapists has a therapy dog, for example, and that dog must go for 12 walks a day with a different camper. And like I said, in the first week, not a lot is shared. By the second week, they're getting a little bit more comfortable, and we have had a lot of disclosure of trauma, abuse, alcoholism at home, bullying at school, things that have caused them to retreat into whatever their screen addiction is, social media, gaming, whatever.
Mm-hmm. So there are certain kids that are primed for addiction, is what I'm hearing you say. If they've got that trauma, or they've got underlying issues, are they more likely to fall into a gaming addiction because it keeps them away from people? Or do you feel that a lot of the issues they have are from gaming? I mean, obviously trauma isn't, but it's kind of like the cart before the horse, or are they traveling down the road at the same time?
No, it's actually kind of a half and half.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say, our camp isn't necessarily for kids who could be diagnosed with addiction,
Mm-hmm.
which is, something, like I said, the World Health Organization recognizes, but nobody really diagnoses.
Mm-hmm.
Because, some of the kids just are more comfortable if they're being bullied or there's traumatic situations in the house, if they can just go in a corner of their room, put their headphones on and get lost in social media or a video game. They might not necessarily be addicted to that product, but it's a safe space. They're getting their dopamine hits. They're getting their cortisol up. They feel involved.
Hmm.
They're communicating through chat boxes or Discord with people, that they actually know or people that they don't know. They're actually having a social life per se online, so they don't really need anything else.
Hmm.
But it's not, the way to have a successful adulthood. It might be a really great way to get out of your current situation,
Right.
but it's not going to lead them anywhere when they graduate, if they graduate high school.
Right. It's like drinking. If you're having a difficult time, you just drink more and more and more. And when it all wears off, you feel horrible. Talk about the specific strategies and the techniques that you use at your camp regarding unhealthy screen time and gaming, social media overuse, because clearly the techniques you're using work, because you wouldn't have your camp if they weren't effective. So can you sort of talk to us a little bit about the specific strategies and techniques you use?
Well, I would love to tell you there's all kinds of mystery therapies that we use, but it's really just about communicating with the kids and getting them on a good sleep and eating schedule. They would tell you if they were here that I talk about sleep every single day at camp for 4 weeks, every single day. I'll say, if you get nothing out of this camp except knowing that you need a good night's sleep, then we've done our job.
Hmm.
So when I have a kid, it's funny because I'll get a call from a parent asking if my program is guaranteed. And I always laugh. Yeah, I always laugh. I'll say, absolutely not. I can guarantee to detox your kid because they're going to be with me for 4 weeks without their device. That's a no-brainer. But then I'm going to send them home to where the problem originated. So are you going to, look at your own relationship with tech? Are you going to participate in the family workshop weekend that we have at the end of camp? We require parents to show up on Friday and stay till Sunday and participate in a family therapy session and participate in some of the camp activities, an improv class or yoga or make a pizza with your kid. We're just trying to rebuild the family connection. And then we'll follow up for 8 weeks after the kid goes home to make sure that they're still sleeping, they're still eating, they're not eating junk food, that they're, doing good in school, and that they are participating in, one of the many things that they got exposed to at camp. I've been to 4 high school plays in the last 5 or 6 years from kids who really found a love for theater based on our improv class. And these are kids who wouldn't even speak to me when they first arrived. And then they went and joined their high school drama club and ended up in a play and invited me and my staff to come see them. So, to me, that is, an immeasurable success.
I'm curious what percentage of parents struggle with overuse of devices, of kids who are addicted. Is it any higher than average? Or, do you find a correlation there between parental screen use and kid addiction?
Well, it's nothing we can prove,
Hmm.
but I'm absolutely positive there is a connection.
Hmm.
We communicate with the parents during the 4 weeks when the kids are at camp. We ask them to look at their own habits, and we ask them to take a tech-free weekend because their kids are with us taking a tech-free month.
Hmm.
And, during the family workshop, I ask them if it was hard or if they even did it at all. And it's really just an example to, they are the parent.
Right.
They are the one that are leading by example. And I'll tell you, as a parent myself, my biggest frustration is the parents that have kind of given up on their parental authority. They're so eager to be their kid's best friend and not the kid's parent.
Right.
And I'll talk to parents all the time. I'll say, your kids will have plenty of friends in the course of their young life.
Hmm.
You need to be the parent, the authority, the one who sets the rules, the one who makes them do chores at home, and not because it's a punishment, but because it's a life skill that they need to be a successful adult.
Well, and it's establishing a healthy home. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. I've never met a parent who wants their kid to have a phone and they want their kids to be playing games all the time. But the reason they tell me their kids do it is because if they won't let them, the kids will scream and have a fit. And I say, so what? Let them scream at you or not talk to you for a couple weeks. It's worth it. Your kids are worth it. And I found the exact same thing true is that it bothers kids more when their parents are on their devices than it bothers the parents when kids are on, because a child needs the parent's attention and the parent doesn't need the kid's attention. So let's talk about assuming a parent is okay saying, okay, I'm going to take a screen-free weekend. I'm going to put my phone away. It's going to be hard for me, but I'm going to do it. How do you guide parents as far as setting control tools or monitoring or setting rules for devices in homes? What do you tell parents as the kids are
Well,
leaving?
at the end of the camp, we have a family workshop weekend, and during that weekend, we present a behavioral contract that the kid and the parents are supposed to sign. Now, it's a fill-in-the-blank contract, so every family is different, and every family can decide on their own. But it's also only 2 pages. It's not super, deep, and that's because every family is different. And every time I talk to parent groups, I get asked to speak all the time about the dangers of social media. And I'll talk for 10 or 15 minutes, and then I'll say, now you can forget everything I just said. Because while I've been talking, 6 new apps just came out, 10 new games came out. There is no way for a parent to actually keep up with the things that the kids are being blasted with, other than good, healthy, non-judgmental communication with your kid. So, I recommend that parents play the video game with their kid. You might think it is the stupidest wasted time in the world, but it drives your kid for some reason. So sit down with them, learn what they're doing, make a character if you can, and play with them. You'll get killed. You'll be called a noob, whatever, but engage with your kid. And the same thing with the girls on social media. Have your daughter usually show you her social media account. She'll be very reluctant at first. But if you are communicative and doing it in a non-judgmental way, you just say, I just want to see. And she'll show you something. And what you don't want to do is go, oh my God, you posted a picture of you wearing that, or some sort of judgmental statement. You just want to know what they're posting, who's commenting on it, if they know that person in the real world, and what they're commenting on, and then say thank you and leave. And then do it again tomorrow, and then do it again tomorrow. You want to establish a routine that the kids are used to showing you their devices, used to you being engaged and asking questions, and then obviously sleep. I tell parents as well as the kids, we have a recommendation that all devices go off at 9 p.m. so melatonin can naturally develop in the brain. So 10 p.m. you got lights out and you're sleeping. So 6 a.m. you're awake. That's an 8-hour sleep cycle. And if you're doing less than that, parents too, you're going to be depressed and anxiety ridden. And of course, you're going to have a tantrum with your kid.
Mm-hmm.
But I also say the same thing you do when parents say, oh, they'll have a tantrum. I'll say, yeah, so what? It'll pass.
It'll pass. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And boy, oh boy, our kids have tantrums at 2 and 3, and we still don't give them what they want. I mean, they have just worse tantrums at 16 and 17 or 15. So you go online and you play these games with your son, and you're appalled at how violent the games are, and you dislike the games. You see that the games are harmful for your son. So then what do you do over the next week? Because you want to watch and engage, but at the same time, you don't want to encourage your kid to watch these horrible games.
That's when you open the conversation of maybe playing a different game.
Okay.
And one of the hardest things that parents for some reason have is I will say, how many of you have connected with the parent of the kids your kid is playing with?
Yeah.
And I'll ask kids at camp, how many of you have a friend online you've never met in the real world? And they all raise their hand.
Right.
So, I will recommend to parents, and I don't know how many actually do this, that their kids set up a FaceTime or a Zoom call with these friends that they have online and the friend's parent. And it's really just a 1-minute get to know you. Mm-hmm. And all you're doing is confirming that the 13-year-old who he claims to be is actually a 13-year-old with parents or a parent on the other end of that screen.
Yeah.
And if you communicate with those other parents, chances are you'll find that they're just as concerned about the violent video games. Mm-hmm. They're just as concerned about the sleep pattern. So if you can all kind of rally together that we're going to not play this game, we're going to play these other games instead, and we're going to turn it off at 9 p.m., then your kid isn't missing out connecting with anybody because everyone's doing the same thing.
What about the idea of parents coming together? I've often have thought about this with classes and a classroom of kids. If you had, say, fifth grade kids or seventh grade kids, and all these girls are using their cell phones and social media, if 5 or 6 of the parents come together and say, you know what, we're going to band together and say, we're going to ask all of our daughters to have a 2-week break from social media. And we're going to do an experiment so that each girl in the group can't say, well, I'm the only one. I'm the only one. What do you think about that idea? And is it feasible? It's almost like positive peer pressure.
I think it's a fabulous idea. I'm not sure if it would be feasible. And the reason I'm saying that is, we have like famous people's kids come to our camp, and very wealthy people's kids come to our camp. And none of them give us referrals, not direct referrals, because they don't want to admit that their kid had the problem and went to our program in the first place.
Right.
So getting parents together to admit that there's a problem is your first hurdle. But if you could, then I think that would be a fantastic plan.
Well, even preempting, even for just regular old kids who aren't addicted, girls who are just using their cell phones and on social media 3 hours a day, for parents to say, we're going to be the group of moms who are the weirdos, and our daughters are going to be the ones who are going to go along with us here, do an experiment for a little bit of time. In my experience, I'd love to hear what you say, is kids who get off of social media, I'm just talking about girls, for a certain period of time, feel so much better the longer they go without it, that then they're motivated more to stay off of it. What is your experience with kids once they detox and they get away from it? Do they start to realize how harmful it was to them?
Yeah, they do, absolutely. And they don't in the first week.
No,
One of the
no,
reasons
yeah.
we made the program 4 weeks is, any kid can white knuckle themselves through the first week, maybe even the first 2. But by the 3rd week, and they're communicating with their peers, and they're involved in other outside activities, and they're learning life skills and having a blast doing it, and not missing their phones, and not missing their social media. It's a hugely curative event. And I think what you're describing could better be suited for elementary and middle school parents. When I go talk to, elementary or middle school parents, I'll tell them, this is who I am and this is the camp I run. And I'm not here to pitch my camp to you. I'm here to beg you to never need to send your kid to my program. So get some sleep. Don't give them a device, or, wait until they're in high school, and once you do, make sure you stay in communication with them, because as soon as it gets out of hand, then, anytime I'm in a restaurant and I see a kid with a rubber covered iPad, I always think to myself, future camper.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're getting addicted at 3 years old.
Yeah. Bad habits that parents can avoid when their kids are younger, say before middle school. What are some of the most common bad habits parents have, and how would you advise them to stay away from them?
Well, it depends if the kids are on devices or not, depending on how young we're talking. I usually deal with parents that are already having an issue. So I'll say, quiet is the thing that we as parents love the most at home. And we tell ourselves they're up there doing their homework, behind the closed doors. And they're not. They have their earphones on, they have their chat windows open, they have their games or their social, and they're completely busy, but you can't hear it. So that's the first thing. And we recommend that all families lose the headphones. If your kid is going to play a violent shooting video game, you're going to hear the explosions and the gunfire. You're also going to hear the bad language in the chat. And to move the computer out of the bedroom and into a common area, kitchen or dining room, a family common area. And it's actually kind of a psychological trick. It's actually kind of embarrassing for a kid who's playing a game that's really violent or has a lot of bad language to be in a public family area and playing this so everyone has to hear it.
Nope.
And that that right there encourages them to play a different game.
I love it. No headphones and using a computer or device in a public area, not in the bedrooms. I think one of the quickest ways to get a young 17, 16-year-old boy into trouble is to allow him to just sit in his bedroom with a laptop, closed doors. I mean, you name it. And it's not necessarily the kid. Parents say, my kid's a good kid. They're not going to do that. It doesn't matter because they are being used by companies and manipulated by companies because the companies want them to buy their stuff. So they go to these kids and pull them in. So I know this is putting you on the spot. How old should a kid be before they have a cell phone that hooks to the internet?
Well, to me, I would say 16.
Great. Okay.
Because when kids first come to camp, we tell them that nobody here will ever tell you not to play a video game or not to be on social media or check your email. That's just not the reality of the world we live in.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's learn how to get what you want in life camp, and 20 hours a day of YouTube or video gaming or streaming is not going to get you there.
Right.
So, and we do a lot of classes, I call them classes at camp. We talk about what big tech wants from you.
Good.
And it's not your fun and enjoyment, it's your time and your money.
It's your money. Yep. So they're really being used. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And we'll tell them if you didn't pay for the product, like Instagram and Snapchat, you are the product.
Oh, yeah.
And we tell them that all the time. You need to understand that you are a commodity. You might be having fun, but you're just a number. And we'll show them movies like The Social Dilemma, which kind of goes a little deeper into that topic. We also have a class called What's Your Financial Footprint? And we have kids, shout out in a group, how much you spend at Starbucks every week? How much are your streaming, subscriptions costing? What is your cell phone bill? How much gas do you burn? How many times do you take Uber? What do you think rent costs in your town? Yeah, I mean, we go through a whole category of what they cost that currently somebody else is paying that they're going to have to pay for or find a way to pay for when they turn 18 or leave home or whatever. I also ask all of them, how many of you want to live with your parents when you're 25? And none of them raise their hand. And during the family workshop, I'll ask the parents, how many of you want your kids living with you when they're 25? And none of them raise their hand. And I'll say, you are on course to do just that.
Wow.
Unless you continue with what we've established here at camp.
Parents will often ask, and this is probably, I'm going to be talking for girls. How many hours a day is okay for a teenage girl to be on social media? Just general.
I get that question all the time too, and there is no solid answer. I also get, at what age should we let them have Instagram? Mm-hmm. And my answer to that is, at what age is it okay for them to see porn?
Exactly. There you go.
Because that's what they're going to be exposed to. Right. So if you don't want them exposed to an adult world, and we don't even get into, the predatory aspects of what goes on in social media. We do at camp, but we haven't even talked about it in this communication. Mm-hmm. As soon as you want your child exposed to all the horrors of online predators and pornography, then you tell me how long it's okay to let your kid have a phone.
Yeah. Love it. Because a lot of the parents who are on Instagram, they're looking at their friends' kids and they're looking at kids at the park and they're looking at somebody on vacation. That is not what a teenage girl sees. And I think parents need to really understand that. Do you have specific recommendations for controls that parents can use on devices or apps that you think are best for parents to use to keep their kids safe? And I know they're constantly changing, but just in general, what are the best ones that parents can use?
Well, the one that seems to be most consistent is Bark. Bark is an app that alerts parents if, bad language is used or talk of suicide. But I'm reluctant to recommend any others because, like you said, there's always new apps that come out, and kids today are super smart, and there's always a way around it. There's even an app that hides your Instagram, and it looks like a calculator. So I tell parents, if you ask your kid to show you their Instagram and they have to log in, it's not their Instagram. It's their fake Instagram that has rainbows and puppies and ice cream, and it's the one to show to parents.
I also wanted to add to that, because parents say, my daughter would never do that. She's a good kid. It doesn't matter. If her friends are doing it, she's going to do it. So this really isn't about good kid, bad kid. I think that all kids are vulnerable to having these kinds of accounts. And so I kind of want parents, when you're saying that, to not dismiss it because their kid's a good kid, because everybody feels their kid's a good kid and they're not going to fall prey to this. Yes, they do, because they're being manipulated. So say what you just did again. If your daughter has to log in to show you her Instagram account, she's not showing you the correct account?
Correct.
Okay.
There's and I forget what it's called, and I'm sure there's multiple of them, but they're ghost apps. So you can download an app that looks like a calculator. So if your parent grabs your phone and looks at your apps, they'll go right by it because it looks like a calculator. But when you click it, it opens up your Instagram. And so the Instagram app can be logging into just a harmless page that you made that has vanilla stuff on it that no parent would be concerned about.
Mm-hmm.
And these are for, what I would say are more the bad kids or the kids that are trying to hide stuff.
Right.
But I totally agree with you. Most kids are good kids,
Mm-hmm.
And they're curious.
Yep. Yep.
I heard somebody the other day talk about our generation are digital immigrants because we grew up without technology and then we've come into technology.
Mm-hmm.
And kids today are digital natives because they grew up with technology.
Mm-hmm.
But then a psychologist friend of mine said that's incorrect. They're digital orphans. And they're digital orphans because there is no generation above them to show them what's safe, what's not safe, how to use this one to avoid that one. Because, when I ask kids at camp, I'll say, raise your hand if you've ever posted a photo online and taken it down within an hour because it didn't get enough likes.
Oh.
Every single girl raises their hand, and usually half the boys. And I found that to be really fascinating because anytime I post a photo online, it's because I like it.
Exactly.
I don't give a damn if anybody else likes it.
Exactly.
And it's just a different mindset. They're out there for likes. They're out there for acknowledgement. They want to be, they use Facetune and other kind of morphing software to clean up their blemishes or make their teeth whiter, to make them look as fabulous as they can look. And it's just completely false.
And it never ends. It never ends.
No.
Yep.
There's no bottom.
Yep. We only have a couple minutes left. Now, one of the best things to do that your camp does is it just takes kids away from it. Says, okay, let's stop talking about phones. Let's start talking about games. Let's go do something fun. So if a parent is going to say, okay, I'm going to have everybody in our house shut off their phones from, let's say, 7 to 8 o'clock at night. They're hesitant because the kids are going to look at them and go, now what, mom and dad? So where does a parent start? I mean, do you tell them, okay, why don't you play games? Or first of all, you got to tell the parent they can't be on their phone and they can't put their kid in front of the television. So do you have suggestions for parents who are trying to wean their kids off? The kids aren't addicted. They want to dial down the amount of screen time. What kinds of things do they do in place of that?
Well, I will recommend going for a walk or playing a board game. Now, in addition to that, it doesn't have to be completely tech-free. You could turn on YouTube and do a beginner's yoga class. You could turn on YouTube and do a beginner's cooking class and set it up on the kitchen counter, and everyone participates in making the family dinner. There are plenty of things you can do with and without technology that everyone can do together. But you hit the nail on the head. You can't tell your kid to get off their phone while you're on yours. So the parent has to be actively engaged on a daily basis because this is a family dynamic issue. It's not a fix my kid issue.
Yeah. And I think it's hard enough to do for your kids, but it's really hard to do for yourself as well. So this is a sort of multi-level struggle for every parent. I could just talk on and on with you, Michael. My guest today has been Michael Jacobus. He is a child development specialist and the executive director of Reset Summer Camp for Digital Detox and Life Skills. Something tells me that in the next year or two, you're going to get busier and busier and need more camps, which is sad, but it's great because you have a wonderful solution for parents. So if a parent wants to find out more about you and what you do in the camp, where should they go and find you?
It's super simple. The website is resetsummercamp.com. My cell phone and my email are at the bottom of the homepage. And just 2 months ago, we created an online course for parents because it is a summer camp program. So if you're contacting me now in the spring and you don't want to wait till July, or if the camp's too far away or too expensive or doesn't fit with your schedule, we did create an online course so parents can pretty much do at home what we do at camp.
Mm-hmm.
And if they do it and they still want to send their kid to camp, we'll refund the entire cost of the course towards
Wow.
the camp tuition.
Yep.
So it's really a no-brainer. It's really getting the parents to recognize that it's a family dynamic issue, not a fix my kid issue.
Love it. As with all issues with kids, it's a family issue. Not that the parents caused it, but everybody in the family is affected and everybody needs to be on board with the healing process. I love it. I am so grateful that you're doing what you're doing. Reset Summer Camp for Digital Detox and Life Skills. It's a brilliant idea. And I imagine it's going to impact thousands and thousands of families if it hasn't already. So thanks so much for joining me today, Michael.